to start with some introductory stuff. Can you please state your name
Sure, James Jacobson,
and your date of birth?
January 5, 1950.
And where do you live now?
I live in St. Louis, Missouri.
And with?
I was with the U.S. Army.
And what was it like in the Army when you were serving?
I went through basic training and then infantry training. What it was like, well, I just went through my boot camp and infantry training, and from there I was sent to Vietnam. So most of my service in the military was in Vietnam and Cambodia. I was involved in the invasion of Cambodia.
Where did you do basic training at?
I did that in Fort Lewis, Washington. I was there for boot camp and AIT, Advanced Infantry Training, for 4 months total.
Did you know anyone when you went out for basic training?
Yes, there were 5 of us from Argyle that went all at one time, and we all went together through boot camp and infantry training and Vietnam.
In AIT, what did you train to be? Just
Infantry.
Did you have any other training after AIT?
No.
Okay. When you went overseas, how did you get there? Like by plane, ship?
We took a jet, and it was approximately 24-hour trip.
What was your tour like when you went to Vietnam? If you feel comfortable.
It was challenging, and several of my friends didn't come back, so we're kind of caught up in a lot of things. Things were happening fast, and it was just tough because my brother was over there at the same time. He was one of the 5 that went over there, and he got shot after a month of being there, and we both were not supposed to have been there in a combat zone together. I elected to stay since I was the older, and the day he was to go back into the base camp to start processing back to the United States, his sergeant had asked me, he said, "We're short of men, could you stay one more night, or you will stay one more night and pull an ambush for us?" And he got shot then. So therefore he wasn't expected to live, and so they contacted me. My brother was in the very northern part of northern part of Vietnam, and I was in the very southern. So they flew me up there, and I was with them about a week, and then I got sent back to my unit, and I just took off one of my boots. I remember saying, "Oh, I'm so glad I'm back." I was just mentally exhausted. And they said, wait a minute, your brother isn't expected to live. We moved him from up north to, I think, Cam Ranh Bay, to where he was going to process to Japan. So I got back on a plane. They got me transportation, and I was very fortunate when I arrived there. He was in good shape. I expected him to be in worse than he had been previously. So, it was challenging for me, number one, to be there. And then I had requested from the Red Cross later to go and see him because he was in Japan about 4 months before he was well enough to be transferred back to Denver Army Hospital in Denver. So they denied that request. So, and my mother and Dad were dealing with my brother as well as I'm over there, and I did my full 14 months tour.
What exactly did you guys do in Vietnam?
We pulled ambushes, we did mine sweeps of the road, we pulled, overnight bivouacs to draw the enemy, and it was infantry, we just did missions out on the...
And you were in the southern part of Vietnam?
Yes, the very southern, yes. It was my base camp, which I wasn't in very seldom, but our base camp was Cu Chi. It was with the 25th Infantry Division. But I was around what they call Tay Ninh, and that meant Rocket City, and so right along the Cambodian border. So we're real close.
Did your brother make it?
Yeah, he did. He died. He passed away at 52, but yeah, he did make it. After he only was in the Army, it was supposed to be 2 years, but he ended up staying over 4 because of his medical. He had half his stomach out, his spleen, a couple of ribs. He was, rough shape, but he survived. And I talked to the doctor when I was up there in the hospital, and he said it was a miracle that he was alive. He got shot with a machine gun from right here all the way down. So
He's a fighter.
yeah, the doctor said it was a miracle. So
I'm still sorry for
oh, that's okay. That happens. That's part of it. So
What was the weather like where you were stationed?
it was very hot and humid and dirty. It was miserable. I would not want to do that again.
Was there anything that you liked about Vietnam?
No, not really. My experience is such that it was a beautiful place in some respects, but while I was there, I didn't take any of that in. We were fighting to get back home. We wanted to come back alive. Me and my friends, and some of us did, and some did. So
If you don't mind me asking, were you guys drafted or did you guys enlist?
I volunteered for the draft, and my brother, he basically had a choice, either going to a work farm or going into the army. Back then the judge gave, because he was drinking and careless driving. This something today is, I don't think, real major, but that's what the judge did, and so he elected to go in the military.
Is there anything you wish you could have done different in Vietnam?
No.
What was it like when you finally got to go home and come back to America?
I was glad to leave. When the plane landed, we actually were grounded. I was just happy to be home. And I wanted to have a McDonald's hamburger. So we were just thrilled. I mean, it was a good feeling. But then when we got home, it wasn't good. I mean, it was a lot of turmoil. People were demonstrating. It was really tough. I mean, so I got in. I stayed here in Argyle maybe 4 days, and then I went to visit my brother, who was in the Army hospital in Denver, and ended up staying there. And basically, he was on disability at the time, so I didn't work. I just basically drank and took some drugs and stuff. You know, nothing. The drugs. My main escape was alcohol, so I drank a lot and got into the pot thing kind of more than anything. And I went kind of underground. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to admit that I was even in the military, because people called you baby killers and they're rioting, and it was just not good. So a lot of us, including other people that I knew, that's how we dealt with it.
We talked about the demonstrations. When you came back to Argyle with our pretty heavy, I wouldn't want to call it like a military tradition, but really honoring our vets up here, was it really, did they welcome you home in Argyle, or was it
No.
still?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying anything negative about the citizens, but when I came, no, there was no parades, there was no welcome back or thanks for your service or nothing like that. Of course, I was only here about 4 days, and then I went to Denver. So, you know, I don't have any resentments against the people in Argyle, but in the major cities they were demonstrating and rioting, and so, you know, as far as Argyle, I don't know. I wasn't, you know, I wasn't welcome per se, but they didn't say anything negative either or call me names.
How were you treated when you got back home? That kind of ties into the last question I asked. Like when you got back to Argyle and then when you went to Denver, was there any difference?
It was a hostile environment in Denver. Of course, it was a big city, and people were demonstrating and protesting and chanting, you know, baby killer, stuff like that. And, you know, that some of that did take place, you know, but you know, we had a mission to do, and we did it. And you know, it was just, we give it our best, and we lost good people, good friends, that'll never have an opportunity to have children or live a life like I did. And so it was upsetting to me, and I felt guilt, the old guilt trip, that survival guilt, that I made it but they didn't. And to this day it bothers me that some of those, because they were good people and they were married, and one of them had a new child and went on R&R to visit the child, and during his R&R he had never seen the new baby, and 2 weeks later he's dead, and he only had like another 6 weeks to go in service. So things like, that was just one of them, but yeah, it was sad.
Would you like to, if you would like, when you were in combat, is there any story you would like to share about that when you were in combat, or no?
We were on a mission, and I guess we just did what we had to do. I didn't care who was in, not just me, but we did our job. We kill whatever's in our sight. For retaliation, when you lose men, the anger is just, and you do things that you don't think about. You're angry, and when there's several people in that group anger, you just you do what you got to do, and you retaliate. Whether there's innocent or guilty people, it doesn't make any difference. And that happened.
What did you do for a living when you came back home?
Well, I didn't really work for about 6 years, and then didn't do much of anything, just kind of drink, I was kind of a mess, to be honest with you. And then, but eventually I got a job, I got married, and I guess my career path would be, I worked for Union Pacific Railroad for close to 30 years, once I kind of got my shit together, excuse the language, but yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about your experiences, whether it be here or overseas?
Well, I still have a resentment against Jane Fonda, so she can kiss my A. But anyway, other than that, I really have a lot of empathy for all the veterans that have been in combat. They live with that. And they deal with situations, everyday life situation that's challenging to them. And thank God that things have changed for the positive with the Veterans Administration. They have a lot of programs available in counseling. And it's really, it's the Vietnam veterans, but I also have a lot of empathy. Probably the other group were the Korean vets that had it worse, and they're not even recognized as far as my feelings are. But the Korean veterans and the Vietnam vets, we did what we could to improve today for the other service members, that they're welcome, they're greeted, and they're highly respected. And that's the way it should have been, and it wasn't. But we built the pathway for them, and we're really happy that that happened, because we know what it's like not to, and that wasn't right, and that's okay. We dealt with it. We don't want any sympathy or empathy from anybody. We did what we did, and I'm just thankful that, and I've been in group meetings through counseling with Vietnam veterans for, several years, and we're all glad that they're treated properly and welcomed, and thanked for their service, because what happened for the Korean vets and the Vietnam was unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. It's a disgrace, but we're okay with it. That's why the Vietnam Wall in Washington was built with private funds and no government funds. We don't need any government. We dealt with it and moved on, and we have no resentments, and we're just very thankful and blessed that the vets are honored and respected and welcomed back, and I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. So things are improving. It's slow, but I still think they have a ways to go. Just like you with your service dog, that when we got out of Vietnam, that they didn't debrief us or nothing. We just left. That was it.
They just
throw your uniform to dress up. That was it, and go. So we didn't know what to expect, or, you know, we're not, you know, we've been gone for a year, 14 months, so, no, they didn't debrief you and say, you know, here might be some feelings you're gonna feel afterwards, or here are how the people are responding out in the public. We had none of that, so I never was, maybe some other, I never was. So, they may say they debriefed, I don't know, they never debriefed me.
Well, thank you for coming out to do this.
Oh, sure, you're welcome. Appreciate that.
Well, so